Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Tuesday, May 17th City Council meeting. We'll start off with an invocation from our mayor, I guess.
Sure.
And followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
You got it.
Thank you, sir.
Please bow with me. Lord, thank you once again for a wonderful day. Thank you for a wonderful city. We appreciate all the givings you have given to us, the blessings you have given to us. We ask that you watch over our staff, our board, and our citizens as we go into the summer months. We ask that we keep in mind that Ukraine is still under a battle, and we ask that you watch over those people and send the blessings there. We do what we do in your name. Amen.
Amen.
Pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
You're welcome.
Let's start out by making sure everybody's here tonight. Kat, if you'll call the roll, I'd appreciate it.
Mayor Shute,
Here.
Bishop,
Here.
Carlisle,
Here.
Mendel,
Here.
Stewart,
Here.
Detman.
Here. Okay, we have a full council tonight. I'd like to announce business from the audience. If there's anyone in here this evening would like to address council on a topic that is not on tonight's agenda, please come forward and see Mrs. Haley. She'll have you fill out a little paper, and we'll call you up a little bit later in order. Mayor's report.
Just a few things. Kudos to the fire department. I think they had over 250 kids at their bike fest. It was a very well attended and really kind of neat. It's fun to see that. And thanks for Terry for, I think, did you
was
sit out
very
there for
fun.
4 hours?
I did. Nearly. I had
She
a ball.
brought her dog with her, so, and had a bunch of kids going after the dog, but fire department did a good job. Art League attended that, Art League Fest, and they did a good job with that this year, trying to regenerate their gala, or whatever you want to call it, and they did a good job. And also the Try, don't forget about the Try. If you haven't signed up, Ralph, June 4th, okay? At least you can try, so.
That's what I saw.
But that's it, but it's on the June 4th, that weekend of the 4th, so it'll be, it's always a good event, a lot of people from out of town, and we do well. So, and the last thing I have is for the council to consider. We have the 4th of July fireworks show. As you can see that the prices for the show have gone up a little bit. We're at $25.5. The total of the shots has gone down a little bit. It's just a supply chain issues and getting the vendors and the Chinese bullets and all that other kind of stuff. So I just ask for your consideration to approve the contract for $25.5 for Pyro Display Company, Inc.
Do I hear a motion on that?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Do we have any money left from last year or no?
I don't think we do we? 'Cause if it is, it's very low.
Yeah.
If it is, it's gonna be very.
Okay. I make a motion that we approve the proposal and authorize Mayor Shute to enter into the contract with a Pyro Display.
Second.
Okay, is there anyone from the audience who would like to comment on this issue? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Council members' concerns, comments, and liaison reports. I'd like to start to my right, Mr. Bishop. Mr. Carlisle.
The only thing I gotta say about the fireworks is most of this money comes from donations, or does it all? CRA gives
5,000 gives CRA gives 5,000, city puts in 5,000, and the rest comes from the community.
Okay. Yeah, that's my only comment.
Okay, very good.
Which we very much appreciate.
Yep, Mr. Stewart.
No, sir.
Ms. Mendel.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I went to the National Day of Prayer Thursday the 5th, and that was amazing. And then on Friday the 6th, I went to the Peace Officers Memorial Day get together. And I want to say, and I had gone to Jerry Pendarvis's funeral right before the National Day of Prayer. The County Sheriff's Honor Guard was amazing at all three of those events, and I told Sheriff Blackman how much we appreciate that. So that was very cool. The Fireman's Bike Rodeo was amazing. The firemen are awesome. And I sat in the shade with my puppy and my ice water, and I just observed everybody having such a wonderful time and touring the firehouse, and it was just wonderful. And then last Friday, I went for a tour of the police station, and there again, that was very, very informative. I'm trying to learn a lot about our city, and of course, I've talked with you over the last year and learned a lot. And I'm just so honored to be on the city council, and I'm trying to get educated. So I just say anybody that will help educate me or tell me what your issues are, I want to be available to hear that. And I've already had an amazing response. So, yeah, it's kind of interesting, but I do want to help. And I want to take part with knowing about our downtown merchants. I've gotten to know a little bit about that, and I want to be on the ground learning more about that. And I feel like we have room for improvement there with our merchants downtown. I don't think there's as quite a good line of communication as we could have, and I want to see how maybe to work on that. I know there's lots of work everywhere to be done. Another thing, I have had a lot of phone calls about some of the employee situations, and I want to see how I can help there with some of the issues. I think, we need to be a family and a team together. We need to be respecting our people, our merchants, our employees, and doing everything we can to help them. And I know that the gentlemen up here feel exactly the same way. So please, we thank you for coming, and please let us know what we can do to help you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Mrs. Mendel. Appreciate that. Ladies and gentlemen, we have a consent agenda here consisting of 7 items. If you'll please peruse those, I'll be happy to see if we can get a motion
I
to
make a
approve.
motion that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
We have, Mr. Carlisle, did you say with all the items on the agenda?
Yeah,
Yes.
H is crossed out.
Yes, H is crossed out. Mr. Bishop, I guess, was the second. Anybody in the audience like to address any of the items that are 7 items on the consent agenda? Having the hearing anything, Mrs. Haley, you are up.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Seeing there is no old business. Under new business, item A1 is appointment to the CRA board. I'll ask Mrs. Haley, our city clerk, to explain the procedure for council to select. We have, I believe, 2 interested parties.
Mrs. Haley doesn't have 10.
That's okay.
Why
Everybody.
Mrs. Haley doesn't?
You want mine?
I just gave her
We'll
mine.
give it to her.
I gave her mine.
You didn't even realize you kicked the bucket, did you? Right here.
Okay.
All right.
We have 2 names being submitted for the CRA vacancy, Shannon Sapp and Nadine Tedstone. These names will be read in alphabetical order. Each council member will be given 1 vote per vacancy. At the end, the candidate with the majority of the votes will be appointed to serve the CRA. This will be to fill the unexpired term, which will last through September 30th, 2024.
Yeah.
Okay.
Ask if you go ahead and poll the council, we'll go ahead and take the vote.
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry, I'm a little confused about this vote thing.
Yes, ma'am.
So just, would you say it one more time, how we do it?
I read the names in alphabetical order of the names that have been submitted, which is Shannon Sapp and Nadine Tedstone. They're read in alphabetical order. The person that will have the majority of the votes, each council person will get 1 vote. At the end, The person receiving the majority of the votes will be appointed to fill the unexpired term to the CRA.
Thank you.
So when the name is called, it would be either yes or pass.
Thank you.
Are either of the two applicants in the audience this evening?
Oh, Ms. Sapp.
Ms. Sapp, would you like to come up and address the board? Anything you'd like to add to us before we take our vote?
My name is Shannon Sapp. I appreciate the opportunity to come before you this afternoon as a candidate for the CRA board. I recently purchased an office building downtown, and while I'm a native of Highlands County, I've not had the opportunity to have business downtown before. I'm really excited to be part of the happenings down here and look forward to many years, hopefully, of serving the local community, and would love the opportunity to earn your vote tonight. Thank you.
Can I ask where your building is downtown?
I purchased the old Kathy's Consignment Shop,
Yes.
659
Oh,
South
sure.
Commerce, just down the way, yes.
Yeah.
We are pending renovations, of course, supply chain issues, as everyone's aware of, but I
Hmm.
do have a new yard going in at some point, so just don't mind the eyesore for the moment. It will start looking better soon.
Thank you, Ms. Sapp.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
that. Anything else? Kathy, if you'll go ahead and call for the vote, please.
Okay. Again, the first name being called is Shannon Sapp. Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes,
There's no need to.
I guess that settles that.
Yes.
Congratulations, Shannon.
Congratulations, Ms. Sapp. Ouch. Stab myself. Item 10A is the next item on our agenda. It's a request to change sign code regarding off-premise sign on US Highway 27. Mr. Jared Borgemeister. Good evening, sir.
Thank you for this
Look
opportunity.
familiar. I think I remember you when you were about this high. Go right ahead, sir.
To keep it short and brief, more or less requesting that the current language reflect the FDOT and the state's guidelines regarding billboards on the same side of the road
Mhm.
as opposed to billboards on either side of the road. And for Highway 27.
Okay, just to clarify that, let me go ahead and read the background. I probably should have done that before I called you up there, and I do apologize. Mr. Borgemeister is here this evening to request that city consider changing the sign code to mirror the state's sign code. Specifically, the request would be to allow off-premise signs to be placed 1,000 feet apart on the same side as US 27. The current interpretation of the city code is 1,000 feet between off-premise signs, no matter which side of the road they're located. This request does not change the restrictions as to the total number of signs as set forth in ordinance 17.11.1. Anybody in the audience have any questions on this matter? Council, would you like to discuss it?
Well, I don't like highway signs. Sorry. And I think that initial, I think the way that it is written that way was to avoid having more of them on the highway than we have now. It gets cluttered, and it reminds me of Georgia. When you hit the highway in Georgia, all of a sudden it goes from hardly any signs to signs everywhere, and I'm just not a proponent of that. So I'm probably going to vote no. Sorry.
When I read this, I think about all the time we spent on signs and codes, and this is, what we have now is what we agreed on. So I'm agreeing with Mr. Stewart. I don't think we need to add more billboards to the city limits.
Yeah, I got something to say.
Yes, ma'am.
Imagine that.
Really, is he not, he's not asking for a new sign. Aren't you just asking to relocate a
That's
sign?
correct. I'm not asking to increase the number of signs.
I think the discussion that was had, and it was, I mean, I don't know how many months we spent on that, but it was kind of the clustering effect that you didn't want I mean, and that was brought out to say, hey, let's leave it where it's 1,000 feet between signs. That was the discussion at that time at the council. And that's where that came from, so. And I think really there's only probably one available permit now for an additional sign in the city on 27.
So the only thing that I could say regarding that was, from my understanding, that was before many of the annexations happened, to include additional parts of the county into the city.
That's a good point.
So now we've kind of run into this problem where the way that things are staggered, we have this exact same thing that we're discussing permitting. We currently have this in the city limits, but it's grandfathered. So, again, it wouldn't be increasing the number or the quantity, the frequency. It would just be kind of allowing for signs that come down to be able to be rebuilt at all. Because right now, the way that things sit, that's not really possible.
Do you have a specific cause at this point in time, or are you just thinking if a hurricane takes out a sign that's within 1,000 feet, you can't replace it now?
I have a
In the same
specific
spot.
example or a specific request
Of an existing signs?
or a prospective sign, because I've had to remove 3.
Why have you had to remove 3?
The economy's doing really well and property's selling,
Oh.
and new landowners from out of town are not very negotiable.
So this is a sign that's current or not?
It's not current now.
Okay, so there's no sign.
It's a replacement,
Okay, and but there was a sign there at one point, is what you're saying?
not in this location.
Okay, so it's a new sign?
He wants to put it in a place where the current ordinance would not allow for
Right,
one.
right.
And he's allowed to do that correctly? Is that correct? I mean, he's
No,
allowed-
not by,
the rules to
not
allow
by
this.
our signage.
He could
You
relocate-
wasn't privy to setting up here and all the meetings and all that we went through to take care of the signage. So,
Under our existing
get
ordinance,
educated.
you could relocate a sign to another place that would be permitted. He's asking you to relax the rules on where a new one can be permitted.
But not
And,
in-
and he's not asking, I'm sorry.
Right.
And he's not asking for an exemption, he's actually asking for us to change the sign code, is that correct?
For the
Yes.
city limits.
That's what, yeah,
yeah.
that's what this is about. Mr. Bishop, any comments? Okay,
No.
you know, I have to be honest with you, we worked on the sign thing a very, very long time, as Lenard had mentioned, and there was so much to it, it was incredible. I'll be perfectly honest with you, I probably absorbed maybe 50% of it. The rest of it you'd have to read in detail if it was specific to you. I did not realize, to be perfectly honest with you, that we had made it so that you couldn't have them on both sides of the road, only on one side of the road. So I'm kind of leaning toward approving this change here when we come to a vote. Because I don't think there's anything really bad wrong with that.
I don't know if you want to turn this into more of a workshop so we can look at that a little better, because we spent a lot of time on it, and it was the purpose back then, and council changes and sort of views, and I'm saying you can't change, but I think, if you're looking at a piece of an ordinance that you're gonna change, just to change it at a meeting is gonna be, to me, a little, I think you ought to think about what we're doing, because we thought about the whole process before, which I'm not, I don't think you limit the number of signs. I think you said you have 3, and those are probably, other than the one on the lake, I don't know if that's been replaced or not, but I think that's probably only 3 signs that you can replace now. You can't add any more signs. We're limited to the number of billboard signs within the city. So it's not a multitude of one, but I think we just have to think through what's the ramifications if we do this,
And each time more county land is annexed, the number increases to
Right.
allow that.
Right,
Right.
But the spacing doesn't.
right.
That's a good point.
Yep. Well, maybe we should ask the audience, since everybody's looking at me, that. Any comments from the audience in which you have, if you have any input on this?
Charlie, you're our sign guy.
Charlie, actually,
He's a
that,
reformed sign guy.
he's a reformed sign guy and former president of city council, if you'd like to address this. Now, he might be competition, so we might want to take this with a grain of salt, you know.
Well, I'm no longer in the billboard business, so.
Oh, you're not?
I'm not in competition.
Okay,
But we did go over and talk about the sign ordinance to great extent, and everybody put their 2 cents in. Coming back and changing it piecemeal, one thing at a time here, one thing there, one thing there, it's gonna all end up changing. So, again, I mean, what, better part of a year we spent going through it, whether it's window lettering or this or that. So when people come back at one thing at a time and change it, then the whole thing could end up getting changed. So, but I don't have any skin on the game in this one, so, you know, it's up to y'all. I'm kinda like the mayor now. I can give you my opinion, but I don't have a vote.
thank you, Charlie.
It's all their fault,
Yes,
so.
yeah. Well, I'll say my last comment on this. I still support the request, and the reason is because it is a mirror image of the state's request, and I don't see that when you go from one city to the other, that it looks that much worse one way or the other, unless you're in a Boca Raton or a Naples or someplace like that. But to have signs 1,000 feet apart on either side of the road, I don't have a problem with that. So I would vote yes to.
Or you'd be like Lake Placid that doesn't allow signs, period.
There you go. You could do that too.
I'm gonna say again, we spent, like Charlie said, almost a year
Okay.
on this stuff, and if we go start changing one, other people's gonna come in and say, well, can we change this? Somebody's gonna say, can we change that? And we're gonna be right back in the same boat as changing and having different people wanna change things. If we're gonna do anything, I agree with the mayor, have a
Okay.
workshop and talk about it.
Okay. Is there another public comment out here? I think somebody else wanted to say something. No?
I'm happy to be part of a workshop as well.
Yep.
I think there's some extenuating circumstances that are
Okay.
worthy of discussion.
So let me go ahead and call the question then. Do I have a motion on the floor, for either yea or nay, that we can vote upon? Is there someone who'd like to make a motion?
You mean like a motion for a workshop? Is that what you
No.
mean?
Well, no, a motion to either to
Oh.
approve or deny this particular request
And if
this
we don't,
evening.
then it dies.
You're confused?
Well, yeah, okay, so if we vote nay, then we could do a workshop? Is that
No.
what you're saying?
So-
there?
No.
Or we're voting one way or another and the workshop's
Go ahead.
out of this?
So I would suggest that we don't vote.
Oh,
In that way,
I'm for a
it'll
workshop.
just die,
No.
and we
Okay.
can bring it
Can I-
back after we have a workshop.
because this is important issue.
Well, he's got, you know, there's
Okay.
something to talk
Can
So-
I make a motion that we table this until we can schedule a workshop
Oh.
to come up with a solution?
Okay, so we have
I
a motion
second.
to table it and a second by Mrs. Mendel. Any other comments from the audience? Mr. Borgmeister, it's not looking good tonight, but it might be in the future. You never know. Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes,
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. 10B.
Thanks, Jared.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jared. We have two items back to back. They're listed on your agenda as items 10C and, 10B and 10C. They are both public hearings, so I will open them both up at the same time. The This is public hearing for ordinance number 1492, an applicant-initiated amendment to the official future land use map of the city of Sebring, amending 3 parcels of land. Parcel number, should I read out all those parcel numbers? You have to do that anyhow, right? Totaling approximately 49.95 acres, located at 3297, 3301, excuse me, and 3305 Gulfview Road, from county medium-density residential to city low density residential. And the second item, excuse me, is also an applicant-initiated amendment to the official zoning map of the city of Sebring. 3 parcels of land totaling approximately 49.9 acres, 3297, 3301, and 3305 Gulfview Lane, from County Residential District R1 to City Single Family District R1. Mr. Swain, if you'll introduce those 2 ordinances for us, I would appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Ordinance number 1492 is entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Sebring, Florida, amending the City of Sebring Comprehensive Plan Future Land Use Map on 3 parcels of land totaling approximately 49.95 acres, located at 3297, 3301, and 3305 Gulfview Road, from county medium-density residential to city low-density residential, transmitting said amendment to the Florida Department of Economic Opportunity for notification, providing for severability, and providing for an effective date." And ordinance number 1493, the companion ordinance, is entitled, "An Ordinance of the City of Sebring, Florida, changing the zoning classification of 3 parcels of land totaling approximately 49.95 acres, located at 3297, 3301, and 3305 Gulfview Road, from County Residential District R1 to City Single Family District R1, and providing for severability, conflict, and providing for an effective date."
And the purpose of these public hearings is to receive public input on the 2 ordinances which were just read by Mr. Swain. I'd like to turn this over to Dana Riddell. If you'll go ahead and introduce yourself and fly along, we'll be happy to entertain you.
Thank you, Dana Riddell, Senior Planner with the Central Florida Regional Planning Council. For the record, we provide technical assistance in terms of planning and zoning to the City of Sebring. Tonight before us, we have a small-scale future land use map amendment and a rezoning. And on our first slide with the aerial image, I'll go over some brief information, but first, before I really delve into anything, I want to preface this particular future land use and zoning change by saying this was a golf course that was located in Highlands County. It has been annexed into the city. At any time during its operation, when it was zoned residential in the county, the golf course could have ceased to operate and been turned into single-family residential because it already had that zoning. It would have allowed 399 dwelling units, and today the zoning and future land use that they're requesting would allow only 214 dwelling units. So this is a decrease in the number of dwelling units that they would have been able to have when they were in the county. So I just wanted to go ahead and start by making that very clear, but let me go ahead and delve into the information. The existing owner is the Harder Hall Golf Club, LLC. The agent for these hearings is Rick Whidden, who's here tonight accompanied by Jeff Kennedy. These parcels are located at 3297, 3301, and 3305 Gulfview Road. And the request is a future land use map amendment from county medium density residential to city low density residential. And they're also requesting a zoning change from county R1 to city R1. On the next slide, we have the future land use map, which shows the existing future land use of county medium density residential, which allows up to 8 dwelling units per acre. On the next slide, we show the proposed future land use in yellow, which is city low density residential and would allow a maximum density of 5 dwelling units per acre. That's a decrease of 3 dwelling units per acre, just on future land use. But then on the next slide, we go into zoning. The existing zoning is County R1, which is their residential district. And in the county, their zoning doesn't limit density. They rely solely on future land use. So this goes back to allowing 8 dwelling units per acre based solely on future land use. But on the next slide, they're proposing a zoning of R1 in the city for single-family residential district. In the city, the zoning can also limit the density. So the density would be limited to 4.3 dwelling units per acre. I'm going to go back into density in just a moment, but since we just had a couple of visuals of the area and the subject parcels, I want to do a brief overview of the surrounding uses. So in the north and northeast, we have an existing golf course, also some single-family residences, and we have the city zoning of R1A. In the northwest, we have a city public zoning and a city mixed-use quality development zoning and a county R1 zoning. Again, we have a golf course to the northwest and some single-family residences. In all other directions, the west, southwest, south, southeast, and east, we have existing single-family residences with county R1 zoning. So basically it's surrounded by single-family residences, but in the north, we have some golf courses with some various zoning districts. On the next slide, we go ahead and we break down the density. So we talked about how in the county, they would allow 8 dwelling units per acre, which means at any point that golf course could have been developed into a maximum of 399 dwelling units. Under the proposed city low-density residential, at 5 dwelling units per acre, it would allow 249 dwelling units. But then we get into zoning, which restricts the density even further. So in the county, we go from 399 dwelling units down to city low-density residential. Oh, I'm sorry. That should actually say, Of course, I find it at the hearing. That should say county R1 and city R1 under table 2. It looks like a copy and paste error from the future land use designation, but basically when we get into the city R1 zoning, we have a 4.3 dwelling units per acre, limiting the total density based on zoning and future land use to only 214 dwelling units. This is a decrease of a total of 185 dwelling units. So we'll go on to discuss public facilities and service analysis on the next slide. There is potable water and sanitary sewer in close proximity, and the city does have capacity to serve those units. And the solid waste provider will be served by a city-approved refuse collector. On the next slide, we discuss transportation and traffic. Since this is a decrease in the number of units, it's going to have a less of an impact on transportation and traffic than the old zoning would have. So we go in to talk about how Gulfview and Medina Way are 2 access points potentially for the proposed development. And lately I've been bringing a lot of planned unit developments before you all, so we're not holding them to any particular driveway entrances at this point because this is just a flat out rezoning without a planned unit development. So I just want to make sure I make that clear as well. But they have 2 roads that they could potentially enter off of, and at the time of development, when we do platting, there will be a traffic analysis required. Also, in terms of public schools, they did receive a letter confirming capacity for at least 200 single-family dwelling units, and we will require binding capacity at the time of development as well, but the school did have capacity. In terms of recreation and open space, The minimum dedication of land for open space is 30% in the R1 district, which totals 14.99 acres of the 49.95 acres, which again will get hashed out at the time of site plan review. Some of that open space may come from front yards, backyards, they may have a dedicated recreation area, things of that nature. On the next slide, we talk about compatibility. So, first of all, we want to go into consistency. Is the zoning and future land use change going to make it possible for development in the city? And yes, that's what we're accomplishing with this zoning and future land use change by bringing it under city zoning and future land use. Then we ask, is the R1 zoning consistent with the low density residential future land use? And yes, they are consistent. And then we ask what goals, objectives, and policies are being met in the city's comprehensive plan by allowing this zoning and future land use change. And it would meet policy 2.1 of the future land use element, which promotes new development and redevelopment to be located where public facilities are available to avoid urban sprawl. And it would also accomplish goal 1 of the housing element, to provide a sufficient supply and variety of affordable, decent, safe, and sanitary housing for the present and future residents of the city of Sebring. On the next slide, we have past action. On May 10th, 2022, the Planning and Zoning Board voted unanimously to forward the future land use map amendment and rezoning with the recommendation of approval. And that would be it for my presentation. Motion options will be available on the screen, but for now, I will pass it back to Chair Detman for
Thank you.
you to close the hearing.
Appreciate it. Okay, seeing that this is a public hearing, I'd like to solicit right now any comments or inputs, questions, comments, concerns from the public. It's your time. Don't everybody rush at the same time now. Okay, we don't have any. Do you need to address the second ordinance? Or is that all encapsulated in what you had just presented?
That's,
We're all set on that.
yeah.
Okay, if there are no comments, then I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing and then open it up for discussion here on the dais with council members. Last chance. Public hearing is closed. Council members, questions, comments, concerns?
I can make a motion.
Go ahead.
Go right ahead
I
then.
make a motion, we approve ordinance number 1492 on first reading and schedule second final reading on June 7th, 2022.
Okay, and we are taking these individually, so I have a motion. How about a second?
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Bishop. Any other comments? Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Okay, I'll entertain some comments, questions, and a motion for ordinance partner number 1493.
I make a motion that we approve ordinance 1493 on first reading and schedule second reading for June 2nd, 2022.
June 7th.
June 7th, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion. We have a second by Mr. Bishop. Any other discussion? Come forward. Mrs. Haley, it's your job.
Bishop,
Yes.
Carlisle,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Item 10D, CRA debt service. So Mr. David Lydell, please step forward. Do you want me to read the background, David, or would you like to do that? See, the background on this item is the Sebring Community Redevelopment Agency has been working with Raymond James Financial and Truist to secure a commercial loan now that the CRA's master plan has been approved and the CRA timeframe extended to 2043. The new loan will replace the initial loan the CRA had secured with Truist in December of 2020 for $1.5 million. The CRA will consolidate their debt into a new $6 million loan at a locked-in interest rate of 4% with a 20-year payback period. The CRA plans to use these funds for the multitude of projects within the district, and the debt service will be leveraged by future CRA TIF review. As a creating body of the CRA, the Florida statute dictates that the City Council must approve of their use of debt, but the city will not be responsible for that debt.
That is correct. David Liddell, Chairman of the Sebring CRA tonight. And to add to the background just a little bit, Ms. Vasquez and I reviewed our marketing plan back in 2019, 2020, and in there it was recommended that we investigate our bonding capability as the CRA. So we went through that process, as you guys have heard from the background information. And originally, when we came to you in December of 2020 to get the first round funded, well, we were looking at a maximum of somewhere between $8 and $9.5 million. But the 10-year treasury at that time was somewhere around 1%. Today it's around 3%. So that interest rate has gone up and hence decreased the amount that we are able to borrow. So the $6 million is what we have sought and are requesting. And Christy has some of the projects that she can highlight that these funds will go towards.
Good evening, Council. Christy Vasquez, CRA Executive Director for the record. As Chairman Liddell noted, these funds will allow the CRA to capitalize on our future revenues in an effort to reinvestment in the district sooner. This would allow the CRA district to realize their effects in a shorter amount of time instead of stringing our projects out along an extended period of time and feeling those effects in a shorter amount of time. The CRA board prioritizes projects annually based on a number of factors such as the present need, future impact to the district, other and future projects that we know that are coming up, and the CRA's current budget availability. I would like to detail some current projects that are key and that the CRA would utilize these funds for. Currently, our main focus is on the restoration of the properties owned by the CRA as we partner with area businesses to redevelop them into economic generators for the CRA district. Each property has its own nuances to take into consideration, such as the age and the condition of the building, as well as the proposed future use and any incentives that are being requested by the incoming business. The buildings have aging infrastructure, such as the HVAC, electric, and plumbing that need to be addressed, as well as additional areas where costly improvements are needed. The CRA's goal with acquiring each property was to restore them back to good working order and to attract a successful business to be able to come in and utilize the space, who might not have considered downtown as a plausible option if had not been given this opportunity. These additional funds would also give the CRA a greater degree of ability to partner with developers who are interested in redeveloping larger properties within the downtown district, or that the CRA themselves might be interested in, but would not be able to take on at one time due to our budget availability. Additional projects for consideration include wayfinding signage to denote public parking areas and gateway entrances into downtown, a pedestrian safety and lighting improvement project to create a safer downtown for pedestrian traffic as we bring in new businesses into the area, additional parking options to accommodate the influx of visitors to the downtown area as a result of these incoming businesses, a rent subsidy program to assist the private sector attract and retain quality merchants to be able to help us augment the merchant mix in downtown, the creation of public restrooms in downtown. That way we take that amenity away from the merchants to have to provide to the additional visitors in downtown, residential infill projects to create new homeownership abilities, a full-time officer dedicated to the downtown to be able to address issues and hopefully deter future issues, development incentives to encourage key downtown development, and the revitalization of the Wall Street alleyway as we attract more visitors into downtown. As I mentioned previously, this list is not exhaustive. It is a living document that the CRA board looks at on an annual basis, and we revisit and prioritize based on the current climate for downtown and what our budget availability is. Any questions on those?
Yeah, I got questions.
Yes, ma'am.
I'm in the dark what's going on here because I guess you and David had meetings with the other council people, but I did not have a meeting. So I don't know what happened to the waterfront and what or what are we voting on here today? And I don't understand. I never had that opportunity to ask questions.
So the last
I'm
time,
sure it was an oversight, but
the last time that you and I spoke, we were going to have lunch. So I was waiting more for that meeting to bring you up to speed on how some of these projects work and whatnot. That's what I gathered from our conversation. This money is separate from the waterfront. Waterfront can be a part of it. They can go towards that if it needs to, but it doesn't have to.
well, I know when we talked about lunch, I didn't know anything about anything like this. It was just talking about, I said I would like to know a little bit more about how CRA, but, you know, I'm just in the dark as where this is going because of not having the opportunity to ask questions and all. And so do y'all understand what's going on? This, to me, is a real inefficient way to run. I don't know. What I'm talking about is it's so difficult to make decisions when you can't talk to any of the team people. So it's so crazy. Well, anyway, so I'm trying to learn how to get educated. But so this $6 million now is going to be redirected to other projects and not the waterfront, or?
It's not restricted to the waterfront. When we originally came and were looking for the loan, we had a project list. The waterfront was on that list, and it still is on that list. But we haven't gotten a design approved. We haven't gotten engineering costs approved. That project is still way out there. So and for that matter, the CR board has not voted on what financial commitment they're making to it. We could use these funds for the waterfront, but I don't know that they're going to all be used
How
for
it was
the
going to
waterfront.
go. Well, I know when we were looking at your 20-year master plan, which I voted no for because of the waterfront, and I was worried about the money. But you had an awful lot of wonderful projects in there. And so I thought they were all real worthwhile, and I'm not exactly sure how to get educated on this.
But you're always welcome to call Christy or myself if you have questions about anything that's on the agenda for, consideration. If we haven't gotten to you or spoken with you about it, because we don't always speak to the council members prior to a meeting.
Well, I really, if I'm going to vote on something, I've got to be educated. Are we voting on something here?
We're
You will be
hoping.
asked
Yep.
to approve a resolution that would authorize the CRA to borrow the $6 million.
Wow, that's a lot of money.
Mr. Lydell, you and Ms. Vasquez, did you meet with all other council members except Mrs. Mendel?
Yes.
Okay, I think that's the problem here, because she had asked me before we started the meeting if there was a pre-meeting, and I told her yes, because I had received an email and responded that I would attend. I'm not sure how we should proceed with this if Mrs. Mendel hasn't had the same opportunity to sit down with the CRA board, not board, but chairman, and because it leaves her at sort of a disadvantage from what I'm hearing right now.
We are kind of under a time crunch. Our terms expire May 25th, at which point that loan rate will go from 4 to 4.5.
Okay.
Oh, man. I'm distressed by a couple things, and I voiced them to you. First of all, borrowing $6 million means that you're going to be required to pay the principal and interest for that without spending any of the money yet. So you're immediately spending money on interest. That bothers me. The other aspect that bothers me is the time crunch. That bothers me, that we're knowing this. Like, we have to make a decision tonight in order to maintain that same percentage, which is wrong for you to bring it before us like that. It also bothers me that the budget for the waterfront was all of this $6 million, and now you're saying that this could be included. So I think that it might be advantageous to say that the waterfront is being dramatically reduced in cost. because you can't do it all. Do you agree?
We don't have a cost of anything yet, so it's kind
But
of.
you certainly can't spend the $6 million that you had anticipated, or the number that you gave us for this first phase.
I would not want to spend all $6 million on that, that's
Well,
correct.
thank you for saying that. Maybe you should say it again louder. So I'm not sure the best way to, I'm not a banker, I don't know the right way to do that, but I would, to me, if you could get a loan, and the other thing that we need to be aware of is, no matter what monies you borrow, it still has to come before us before you can spend it. Is that accurate?
In what regard?
For projects, like you're gonna need to get our approval.
I
And
think
if
it
you're
de-
not gonna get our approval, then I'm gonna say no to this.
I mean, anything that our board has the authority to oversee and manage our budget.
Right.
And I don't think that I can speak for the board that I'm going to give our authority away.
Uh-huh.
But
Well, how can you
but
do
we
a-
do work with you guys and
Yeah.
get your approval on projects. I mean,
Well,
we
you'd
come
have
with-
to,
Yes.
because it's our property. It doesn't belong to you. It's the city of Sebring's
Correct.
property.
So there's no way that we could do anything on City of Sebring property
Without coming
without your
before
approval.
us,
Absolutely.
right.
Can I address a couple of your issues?
Please.
So from the cash flow point of view, we did discuss this with the mayor. That interest rate is 4%. I managed money for the city back when that you guys had Harder Hall.
Right.
And the investment policy allowed for government agency bonds. Those are just over 4% right now. So
Okay.
we're not necessarily hemorrhaging money because we've taken out the loan. We'd be able to cover that interest payment anyway. I don't know that because of the timing of our meetings and the way that it works to go through this process, that you're ever gonna get a whole lot of lead time. It was kind of rushed a little bit back in the first time we did this.
Yeah.
Because the offer is not an open-ended thing. It's typically 30 days and then we have to go through the process of working with bond counsel, with the investment banking firm, and getting everything ready to present to you. And we're even having to hold our second meeting, which we don't normally hold, to be able to get approval from the CRA board after y'all approve it tonight. The waterfront has changed. You know, originally, if we were looking at $9 million to be able to borrow, that changes it dramatically. But the reality really is that when we started this and we went back and looked at the notes, our original plan was to be able to fund the splash pad, redo the playground, possibly work on the beachfront, and maybe work on the pier. And that's before you ever had a concept design or anything else. I mean, we didn't know where this was going to. And then we got put in a spot where we had to say, okay, you fund this project and you can go forward with engineering and design. I mean, that happened here without any of my board support or input or anything else. So the conversation has changed dramatically over the last 18 months. Where we're at today, I think it's still evolving and changing. I don't think we're there. And this has got to be a partnership of the CRA, grant funding. You know, we had hoped we would even be able to get like, you know, county or Fish and Game. There's other places that we were looking for and hoping that they would come in and partner, as well as the city. I mean, because when you think about it, in those numbers that Kimley Horn provided to us, their underground work was $300,000. That's what they thought it would cost to fix the drainage. They're talking about just that one piece of property. They're not talking about the Circle and South Ridgewood all the way down, which I think when we talk about trying to fix the whole problem. So that's more expensive.
Right.
Does that become a city problem or a CRA problem? You know, so I think there's still a lot going on with that. Do we have funding to commit to the waterfront? Potentially, but we need to get to where we know what we're doing, and we don't know that answer.
Okay. Well, that sounds good, and I'm in agreement with you on most of that. But $6 million, the nut on that's gonna be $440,000
Right.
a year.
That's less than what we're paying now.
Which is, that's less than you're paying now on 1.5?
Correct.
Well, that certainly needs to be fixed.
Wow.
It was a shorter term. It's heavier in principle, it's shorter
Yeah,
term.
okay, so, but my point is, and I can appreciate refinancing most definitely, but my point is, that's almost half your income.
Yes. But it's also based off of our income not increasing, which if we are making these investments into the downtown district, as Christie said, we would be recognizing more of the improvement, and that TIF revenue should increase at a faster pace than if we didn't take out the loan.
Well, I can appreciate that as well, although who knows what the economy's gonna do? You have no idea.
Right.
And that will affect, the tax revenue. What does our lawyer have to say about this?
You are the governing body who has to approve it. They can't borrow the money without it. A lot's happened since, but the CRA board, I think, forecast where they wanted to go with this a year and a half, couple of years ago now, that they wanted to borrow against the future earnings. And they went to the first round to borrow. They said, well, your time period ends in X number of years. That's not very far. If you renew your plan, go out longer, you'll have a longer period to
Sure.
bring in revenue. And so that's why they went with a two-loan sort of process. Phase one was a smaller, based on the shorter lifespan when when you all approved the
right.
longer period. That then opened up the opportunity for them to pursue this, the larger dollars. So this has been their goal for some time now, and this money is to fund what they can fund of that.
Right.
There are some of these projects we will not be able to do if
Well,
we don't do
yeah.
this.
Right, yeah. I mean, there's projects on this list that I've never even heard of. Is there not a financial vehicle like you borrow the money and use it as you need it? Have you looked into that type of
Yes, we have.
vehicle?
We have.
And Mayor, do you have is there anything like that that might work?
And that's a line of credit. I think what happens with this kind of funding though is different than a bank loan. It's public funds, and they pretty much arbitrage this money is what it is. So it has to be fully funded. At the time, it's like getting a construction loan on your house. You can't get a fixed rate mortgage until
Unless
it's
you
fully
borrow it
funded.
all.
Until it's fully funded. So, and this is kind of the similar thing. You couldn't get this. You could get a variable rate that'd be a prime plus or a 10-year T-bill plus,
Yeah.
whatever it is, but it would be a floating variable rate. And this is it's kind of a pre-funding a lot of these projects. The biggest issue that's happened over the last couple of years is, like David said, you went from a 1% 10-year bond to now you're over 3%. So, you're going from a 2% rate to a 4% rate. Actually, 4.5% is what the market yields right now as far as what this rate is. So it's, where rate's going to go? Are they going to go up? They're going to come back down? It's kind of a gamble on that side of it. This one's a 4.5 or 4% fixed for the 20 years. If you have, it makes sense in a standpoint. If you have big projects to pre-fund, this is the way to do it, because at $500,000 a year, that's kind of what you're limited to projects.
Right.
So if you have some projects that are going to take, or 2 or 3 projects that are going to take, $1.5 million to $2 million. Some of these buildings that we have, we're getting into the buildings, and it's just not buying the buildings now. It's roof repairs, it's plumbing, it's bringing stuff up to code so these people can get into the buildings. So, there's some other issues that come into play. It's just, it's a tough decision. I agree on this. Do you do this if you can put the money into something, or even on a 2-year treasury, you're at what, about 2.5, David, probably 2.7
So
or
are they
something.
legally allowed to do that with these funds?
So as long as they're
Reinvest it?
government, agency type issues, I believe you can.
You can't make more than you are paying on the borrow.
But you can
come up real
invest it
close.
and get a couple percent.
Right.
Yeah.
So you could do that, and, even, we talked about a 10-year, 10-year rates now to 460 is what your investment could be. So if you want to arbitrage, but you can't do that. But I mean, you cover the interest. It's really, and Terry, I know you're confused, and I think everybody has probably got a cloud over them saying, okay, if you had the projects and you knew exactly what it was, you could say this what it is. This is a pot of money that, on a net basis, it's probably, your interest now is what, $250 a month, or $250 a year, I mean. So technically, you're looking at about, if you invest it on a short-term basis and say pick up 2.5%, you know, you're now cutting that into half. So it's, you know, your cost of money is now, you know, $100,000 a year, $125,000 a year to get projects going, you know, into the future. I think what's going to happen, you know, and talk to David and Christie about this, you know, you asked about the waterfront. It's probably going to get scaled back to where,
Dramatically. Yeah.
to where the city's, you know, the city's going to have to pick up a portion of that to redo it.
Be careful,
So-
you don't vote, remember that.
I know I don't. That's why I'm throwing it on you. So, but I mean, in realistic terms, if it's, that waterfront's a $10 million project, you're borrowing $6 million now and taking half your money, you know, $4 more million, your debt service is $700,000, you've wiped out, you know, Christie doesn't have a job anymore, so, and, you know, there's no additional revenue, so I think that, you know, that's another decision that has to be made is where do we go to the waterfront? We haven't got any firm numbers on it yet. If they're between the 17 and 24 million, you know, it's a dead deal in my mind. But you don't know. That's the problem. We don't know where it's at. And really, if you take a look at what we could do with the waterfront, we can do a lot to that waterfront to make it livable. There's a lot of cleaning up to do, and if we can cure the retention issues, I think that's gonna be, there's issues there. So there's a point that we could scale that back. And maybe, you know, that be part of the project, but this is kind of a pre-funding of projects that you have planned at a much faster speed than going at $500,000 a year. So, which probably doesn't solve any of your concerns, but
No, it makes sense what you're saying.
Yeah.
I'm still,
But they did look into a line of credit.
they did look into it, yeah.
and I think too that, you know, you said about getting stuff approved. Well, you approved the budget.
Well, we have,
So you
we've
do
already
see,
approved the budget, right?
you do see what they do on an annual
Right.
basis,
So that scares me too,
Right.
because there's things we've already approved, which
Right.
means they're gonna be using this money to pay for it.
Right.
You know, is this like where you go and you talk this stuff over? Is that how this works? I mean, to try to figure out, because I am new and know very little about all this. I do feel like I understand the waterfront, and I appreciate all y'all are doing, trying to help our city, but is that a reasonable amount of money, or how do you figure this out? You know, they
This
have
one you
all
kind
this-
of backed into to say this is what we can afford to offer at this point in time. So it takes 50%, basically 50% of your revenue goes to debt service. Now, the real cost is just the interest side of it, so, you know, the principal is not, but if you use all the money, then it does become your debt service. But
So there was an investment banker that took our budget and looked at it, and then they went through and we classified which expenses were absolutely required, such as salaries and stuff, and what was not required. And we basically run a pretty good ship, is what I would say, because you've only got about 50% of your money that's allocated towards that overhead cost. So the rest of that money could be used as collateral and debt service. So that's how we got to that number. They projected our expenses would rise at a rate of 2% a year, and our revenue coming in would stay the same. So it's a very conservative method of determining what can be used.
Yeah, I don't think that we are expected to understand line and verse every bit of this. That's why that's why we go to the experts, that's why they go to the experts, that's why our mayor.
Just seems like such a debt, a huge amount of money, but then it's getting a lot of stuff, you know.
Oh, sure.
And so y'all are feeling pretty good about it, or?
You guys have any comment over there?
I did go to a meeting and listen to them. A major percentage of this money would go downtown to redo the buildings, and we've always talked about wanting to do something for downtown. The waterfront, for lack of a better word, is kind of on the back burner because of no plans and stuff. And like the mayor said, there's a lot of things that can happen at the waterfront to clean it up and make it look a lot nicer, and not get into a place where you get down there and tear everything up, and then you figure out I can't put nothing back. So I think they're regrouping and saying, let's do more downtown and make downtown like we want it. If we do downtown, like a lot of small other towns, it draws people, like restaurants and.
You know, we have a wonderful gym in our downtown area, you know, and I've said before, you know, going to this past few months, or last summer, I guess, to Asheville and Black Mountain, and we could have that here, you know. There's a lot of potential. So does that seem like a reasonable amount of money for what we're getting?
What do you mean, reasonable for what you?
Well, 6 million, because I think isn't 1 million of that already spent or something?
It'll be rolled into that, paid off.
Yeah, they're gonna pay off the debt, the existing debt, but you still have, there's $1 million still sitting in the bank that they haven't spent yet.
Yeah.
So you still have your net 6 million. So.
And so you have a plan for these different projects, and we would hear about them?
Yes.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
What I would like to see happen, I would like to have the city council get a report from you guys on a regular basis about the monies that are spent. And we're not getting that. I mean, down to facade grants. Because I feel like there's a degree of scrutiny that we haven't required that needs to happen. You guys agree with that?
Well, I don't see anything wrong with it.
Well, I know, and I've talked to David and Christie, that we do need to help increase our, I guess, our communication. That's what you're talking about, communicating better, so we know more what's going on. And yeah, and to speak to Terry about the amount of money, you know, it is a lot of money, you know, but it takes the money to do the projects and to develop things. It would scare me to death if I had to borrow $6 million and pay it back, you know. But they have an income, and like Mr. Detman said, they have done their research. They've talked to their bankers, and David, he's a money man himself, so I feel confident in what they're trying to do. I do feel confident about that.
I think
Mr. Bishop?
an important component of this is to make sure that the general public also understands who's responsible for this. I read the background on that, and the last portion of it before the comma said, but the city will not be responsible for that debt. So I have a couple of specific questions. I guess they would be legal questions. Should the CRA not be able to fulfill their obligation, who does or who becomes responsible?
As far as the payment?
Yes.
So assuming they just simply did not pay it for whatever reason, the
Didn't have the income, let's say.
at Truist, sort of out of luck, because that's the collateral on it.
Okay.
But TIF money is not sort of like business revenue that you have good years and bad years. It's very smooth and very consistent from a lender's perspective. You know, it's a very solid piece of collateral, because the money is going to get paid. It goes up and a little, down a little, but it doesn't drop in half, and it doesn't stop when the business owner, you know, retires or sells or something like that. So it's a very solid piece of collateral to loan against. And what the amount that they are willing to loan to the CRA is much lower than the overall money that the CRA is anticipated to bring in with that revenue. They're not giving them, loaning all of it up front, right? They're going to.
Could you say that again?
Yes, ma'am. The bank's only willing to loan a portion of the overall revenue that the CRA is expected to receive.
Okay.
They're not giving them all the money they'll get in the future, but some 70% or less of that of that money. So the bank's building in some cushion for a potential decline. And like David said, they're not factoring any rise, which is probably going to happen. So the bank is covering itself by its underwriting guidelines on how much to loan based on the collateral.
And actually, I can understand with our financial instability how you would want to jump in and keep it from going to the 4.5. I can understand that and have that come on you pretty fast.
And if I can, let me just note one thing that's in the resolution that you're being asked to approve, is it specifically says this 2022 note shall not constitute a debt, liability, or obligation of the city of Sebring, Highlands County, or the state of Florida, or any political subdivision thereof. And it's only an obligation of the CRA payable solely from the pledged revenues or the future TIF money that's coming in. That's the pledged revenue, that's the collateral.
Okay, and that's in the resolution.
Yes, sir.
So, in effect, if I'm reading this correctly, the only way that the city of Sebring, the taxpayers, could become liable for this is if the CRA ceases to exist.
If the city, well, let me answer it. Number one, the loan is anticipated to be paid off during the current, now, extended life of the CRA. They know when the CRA's term's gonna end. They have it factored, so all the money's repaid prior to that date. So it's not gonna just jump in your lap at the end and go, wait a minute, there's 5 more years of payments here.
So we'd have to be crazy enough to discontinue the CRA as a governing body, and then we're on the hook.
If you did, and I'm not certain
If
about
we
whether
did,
you
we
pick
should-
up all of that, you would certainly have the liability, but I believe it would still be limited to the pledged revenues. I'd need to research that further. That their debt, they're not gonna come just take money out of the CRA's pocket. The debt is limited to the pledge of the revenues. That's where they get their money. That's
Just the
TIF money.
TIF portion. So that's
Okay.
everything on top of the base.
So they couldn't, for instance, come and say, we want that building you own off the circle to boot.
Gotcha.
Their recovery is just from that TIF revenue.
Okay.
But it's such a good, consistent source of income that they're comfortable with that.
So to give the taxpayers a level of comfort on a scale of 1 to 10, how well protected are our tax dollars?
There's no tax dollar, no City of Sebring general fund
Liability on
money
our part.
that is exposed
So
to
you're
this.
saying a 10?
I am a taxpayer, and I have no concern about the City of Sebring being
I like that. I like that. All right. Well, we've had some discussion up here. Anyone else want to discuss? Mr. Bishop, anyone else?
We pretty well beat it.
We got
to
plenty
death.
of people out here that might want to chime in on this.
I want to say one more thing.
Go right ahead,
So,
sir.
as far as the scrutiny about where the funds are being spent, if you're using the CRA money for private businesses, we're not hearing about it. But if you're using that money for public property, public areas, owned by the city, then we do have to vote on it.
Right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's right.
Which means there's a large portion of it that we don't vote on it. Right?
It could be, and I don't mean to hem-haw, but I think there's a legal question in there as far as where does the city overstep its bounds and we get into a bad area between mucking stuff up. And I would leave that to Bob.
That was very diplomatic, the way you said that. I already know
I'm
the
trying.
answer. I'm just trying to clear it up in my brain, but I do realize now that we do not have anything to say if it's private property.
Well, I mean, probably from the,
So like if you're helping a business, you're investing into a restaurant, and
Yes.
then that's not us.
right, we have a different process, but we're not trying to keep it from you though either.
Well, okay, so, but in reality, what I ask for is, please don't keep it from us,
That's fine.
because we would really like to know. And during this process, I found out a lot of areas that you contributed and helped people, and I'm a proponent of it. And it surprised me, and I thought it was good. But, so it would be nice for us to be aware of where the money is going.
If you roll the clock back again, about 2 years, we tried to get on a cycle where we were gonna meet with you all individually on a quarterly basis. but we found ourselves before you at so many meetings here recently, we kind of felt like, okay, we were having to take this one bite at a time. We
Right.
can certainly get back to getting more information to you and keeping
It
you
would be
abreast.
helpful, thank you.
Mark, I think, and also on an annual basis, you are approving the budget, so the restaurant program was 75,000, I think, or whatever it was. Well, you approved that.
Yeah,
pot
the
of
monies,
money.
but we didn't
They
know exactly
distribute
where it went
right,
to.
Exactly,
And-
but
and
you
I'm
still do
curious.
have,
I'm
you
curious
still
about
have
it.
some control over that because you do approve that budget, so.
Just the budget, but not the end
Direct,
result.
where it goes direct to,
Correct.
correct, so, and that's why you have a CRA board
Well,
to that.
yeah.
so. Or you become the CRA board.
No.
Okay.
And you can do that. That always remains an option, but you've got good, hardworking people
No, I'm,
looking at that
I'm right there.
for the city.
I think you got somebody in the public, Tom, that wants to talk.
Okay. Mr. Stewart, I do believe, though, you had requested a quarterly report from them, make us feel a little bit more comfortable.
Yeah, some way that you could let us know would be really helpful.
Is there a way to do that? And the other thing, before you sit down, David, please don't take this as an admonishment, because I'm sure that it was an oversight. Any time that you do meet with members, make sure all the members are included, 100%.
Yes, sir.
Thank you very much. Yes, sir. Are you just holding up the wall, or would you like to speak? Come on, Dan.
Dan Andrews, for the record, City of Sebring resident, CRA business owner in the district at least. I'm a little confused at the confusion, and I don't want to be critical, Mark and Terry, but I'm pretty versed in what's going on in the CRA, and I think it's because I attend and pay attention to their meetings on a monthly basis. And there wasn't anything presented tonight, and actually any of the details that we talked about that we haven't talked about either before the city council or before the CRA board over the past 2.5 to 3 years. And so I don't want it to look like we're discrediting the job that that board does, because we appoint them for a reason, and that is to administer the operations of the CRA. You know, those are TIF revenues that you guys don't even have, you can't even touch because of the CRA's existence. There are other smaller CRAs, like I'll use Avon Park as an example. Their budget's a lot smaller, and their city council administers that CRA, and they operate as the CRA board. But at some point, you know, it's inefficient to try to micromanage the board that you all appoint and the budgets that you approve. And I just hate for it to go that direction, because then it starts to look like we don't have any confidence in what our board is doing and how they're implementing the job that they're sworn in to do. So I just wanted to add that as a point.
You know, actually, when you think about it, though, accountability is not micromanaging anything. You have to have, everybody has to see what's going on, and that's for, you know, protection for everyone.
Yeah.
But, yeah, so
Yeah,
I
and
think
I
it's
see it all going on because I go and I attend the meetings. And
Well,
I-
actually, I do want to start going to those meetings. I'm
Good idea.
talking to Bob Swain about that, if that's okay for me to go.
Sure.
And because I do want to know how CRA is doing, you know, their stuff, and I think there are a lot of really good things they're doing. But it is good to try to, you know, especially for the team here, to know how all this is working.
Sure.
So, yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So, Mike Waldron, Sebring residential owner here. How many of you have ever read Florida Statute 163.356?
I give up.
Just raise your hand. That's the CRA statute. The only reason I know is as a previous councilman in Lake Placid, I brought this CRA idea to the council at that time. I can't remember how many years ago. And there was a guy with silver white hair and round glasses that we called upon. And he helped us out a lot. His name was Peter Pollard, because you guys have one of the best CRAs probably anywhere in the state of Florida. And so that's what I would encourage. Nothing against not knowing, but indeed there's a lot to unpack in the Florida statute 163.356. It took months and months of meetings just to read through it, understand it. Pete came to several of our meetings in Lake Placid and helped us get through. And then the board, our council still said, no, we're not quite ready yet. They didn't quite understand it, and I think finally they've moved on to the next step, and I believe the city council is now the CRA board, which was not what I was trying to push. I was trying to give the people in the community that owned businesses like Tony's Barbershop, where he doesn't live in the city, so he doesn't have a say-so and can't vote, to have them have a little bit of say-so. But I'd say kudos to these guys. And, you know, on that last sentence, it says, as the creating body of the CRA, Florida statute dictates that the city council must approve of their use of debt, but the city's not responsible for that debt. That's a great sentence, and there's a lot in that sentence. So be grateful. As far as transparency, yes, ma'am, I would go to every meeting to try to learn everything the CRA's doing. Because that $6 million, you're talking like 20 years, we need that improvement in Sebring. Thank you.
I just want to say one more thing. I have total confidence in the CRA, Christie and David and that board. And we're getting a new board member, and from what I understand about her credentials, she's going to be very good on the board. I think
Financial background as well.
Yeah, with her financial background stuff, she's going to be excellent on the board.
It's good to know.
Okay, so you guys better go ahead and bone up on this state statute. We're gonna have a quiz at the next meeting.
Okay.
Anyhow, I don't think we're second guessing the CRA even in the slightest.
Right.
I don't think that's the case here.
Never has
I
I think you're
correct,
asking
it
for
never has been.
communication.
We're asking for
Yeah.
better communication, inclusion by all 5 voting members, and we stand behind you. Okay, so begs the question here, does anyone up here like to make a motion
I
on
make a
this?
motion that we approve CRA securing the $6 million of debt service to be utilized for projects within the CRA district, as well as approval of Resolution 2022-06.
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Carlisle and a second by Mr. Bishop. Any further discussion up on the dais? Hearing none. Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop.
Yes.
Carlisle.
Yes.
Mendel.
I don't know what to do.
Well, now's the time.
Can I pass?
No.
No.
It's a yes or a no.
Can you come back to me?
No.
No, it's gotta be in order, otherwise that's called cheating. I'm the last one.
Yeah, let's see.
You need a coin?
No, I don't need a coin. I'm gonna vote yes.
Okay.
Stewart.
Yes.
Detman.
Yes. Okay.
You're welcome.
Anybody else want to?
Keep up the good work.
Take a break?
This should be a quick one, actually.
Are you
Yes,
sure?
I'm gonna be a quick one.
Is this the phase
Breeze
1
right through
design,
it.
10E?
Yes, sir.
Whew. Item 10E. This will be at your August 17th meeting. Council passed a motion to execute a construction manager at risk contract for phase 1 design of 228 North Ridgewood Drive. Marmer Construction, Mr. Badenhorst here. Come on up, William. Talk to us.
Willem.
Willem, I'm sorry. Hang on a second, I'll get my glasses.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Willem Badenhorst from Marmer Construction. And as Tom just told us, we were awarded.
And a CRA board member.
And a CRA board member.
Yes, so this is the result of a contract the city entered into with Marmer Construction for phase 1 of our design process for the renovation of this building. So basically, just an overview. Go right there. An overview of what phase 1 was is we were contracted to develop a 50% set of plans for the renovation, and then prepare a budget cost to kind of get a ballpark idea of where this project was heading. And then the results of that, which is what we're discussing tonight, would then determine whether the the city council would proceed. So the method we used is we basically analyzed existing conditions at the site, and then through a series of meetings with city staff, developed a plan for needs and wants, and the normal design process as to what the goals were as far as that's concerned. And then once those were consolidated into a set of drawings, like we said, the 50% said, we developed a budget based on those criteria to present this number. Flip over there, Scott. I'm going to start with a few key points for the building on the Ridgewood, and I'm sure everybody realizes we're discussing the Orchard building on North Ridgewood. So that building sits on a parcel that's about half the size of the current City Hall sits on. So the size of the property is significantly smaller. There's 58 existing parking spaces there, but without changing impervious area, it's possible to realize in the low 70s by demolishing basically the drive-through structure and reassigning those spaces to parking, which is a key factor because we don't really want to change green space in any of these projects. That opens a whole can of worms and leads to a lot of expense. The net is that you lose probably 10 spaces of what you have on this property currently, compared if you take the parking in the back and the side lot altogether. And then the last thing I'd want to just kind of point out is that current City Hall here is around 9,500 square foot utilized. The proposal ended up, after this design process, ended up occupying the first and second floor of the Ridgewood building, which totals 12,750. So that represents about a 34% increase in usable space for City Hall to occupy those two floors. And then there's a third floor, obviously, on that building. That's another 270 square foot, so for a total of just over 20,000 there. So that we'll reference a little bit later on how that compares to existing. All right. First part of the process was the assessment, and I'll go through a few key things we found that basically drove the rest of this process. The first thing we realized after our analysis was that the structure is structurally sound. The building was built really well, especially considering its age. And even though it hasn't been maintained from a finish perspective, the fundamental structure is in really good shape. And I don't think you're very far away from what would be realized with new construction, to be honest with you. So you technically make the argument that you can build a slightly better building from that perspective, but not by much. So that was a key part of making a determination that this was a worthwhile endeavor. Two things we found that was severely lacking was the roof, which is way past its useful service life, and there would be no sense in spending any money on that to try and make anything serviceable there. And then the second big item was the fenestration. So exterior windows and doors. It's insulated, but it's a system that's not available anymore. It hasn't been for a while. So future service, that kind of stuff would be really hard to do. So we made a determination that, from an efficiency point of view, storm compliance, a whole bunch of stuff that we can lump into that thing that would definitely be in best interest to completely replace those items. Mechanical, electrical, plumbing, MEPs, those systems are pretty much worn to the point where you could call them functional, but it's, the next day might not be. So I don't think it would be wise to assess that those things have much of a service life left or any real reason to try and mitigate any current issues. And the other problem with the existing mechanicals is that you're obviously nowhere near the efficiency of what new equipment would be. And that's just because they're that old and that stuff wasn't available back then. So you could realize with new equipment, obviously a lot more efficient structure. And then the plus side to most people, but it's sort of a byproduct of everything we're talking about, is that you would get completely updated finishes in this process by the time you've renovated it that far. So you would have the aesthetics of the structure would be new and up to date. Thanks, Scott. All right, so that brings us to some objectives that was outlined during the meetings with staff, city staff, and I'll go through a short list of those as well. First thing was we wanted to add public restrooms, ADA compliant. that is not currently there. And a byproduct was to have these bathrooms accessible from the outside to the way where they can be utilized for public events downtown without having to gain access to City Hall itself. So we made that sort of a priority. Then the second item was ADA compliancy throughout the entire structure. And obviously a lot of the old buildings downtown struggles with this. This is some of the things the CRA battles with these projects on these older buildings is to bring these things into compliance with current code where the structures are useful. Current Florida Fire Protection Code dictates that the 3-story building would be fire protected, which that building is not, so that would be a critical item that would be upgraded from what the existing state is. And then I've sort of touched on mechanical, electrical, plumbing, efficiency, and service life. So you basically reset the clock, obviously, on the equipment, and you sort of punt any sort of real service concerns way down the road. And you bring everything up to an efficiency level that's much more in line with what a new building would be these days than renovation. We're trying to renovate or to reuse some of the existing components. And the last item I'd like to mention here is ballistic protection. And I know this is sort of a strange thing, but believe it or not, in this day and age, that's a common thing for government administration buildings to have ballistic separation between public use areas and the office areas. So we've baked that into this as well. That's a quick view of the first floor. We don't need to go into any details here. It basically boils down to a lobby area at the entrances with public restrooms that we mentioned, a new ADA compliant elevator shaft, and fire escape. And then to the north of that, to the lobby, would be council chambers with some auxiliary spaces that's basically service mechanical, as well as audio video equipment, that kind of stuff that would obviously be brought up to date. So that the whole wing would basically be dedicated to the council chambers. On the south side of the lobby, we have a reception for the city clerk, and then the rest of that wing is building and code enforcement. The existing vault, you'll note, was dedicated to be record storage for the building department, so that kind of worked out as a pleasant byproduct. Next one is the second floor. That retains the double volume lobby, just to kind of give a spacious feel to that spot. The one drawback to the building is that the ceilings are probably a little bit lower than what new construction would be in this day and age, but that can be offset by some of the things that we're proposing to do here. One of it is to remain, the majority of the lobby would remain 2 stories, so you'd have that double volume space there. To the north of that is the finance department with their own conference space, which is lacking in this building. Building department has a conference room as well. And then to the south of it is city clerk and the city administrator's office. And again, another space for record storage, because the existing vault is two stories. And then the next slide is the strangest bowling alley you've ever seen. So this proposal includes demolition for everything that's up there, including all the existing MEPs, and then installing all the new services. So all the electrical, mechanical, fire sprinklers, everything that would be required to make that space serviceable for the future would be installed with the initial project, and the rest of the space would then be not built out to where it could be utilized for future use, so undetermined at this point in time. The reason we propose to do it that way is it makes no sense to have to make a decision down the road that you're going to utilize this space for whatever it may be, whether the city increases their services or whether they lease that space and create a revenue stream. Who knows what they decide to do there, but it makes no sense to have to retrofit existing equipment that was just installed a few years earlier, or whatever the case may be, if you already went through this process. So we just covered that part of it already in that third floor. And then I just have a few little pictures here that was part of the document that you guys, I know you've got a much more in-depth document that describes the findings of this. But basically, just to reiterate, you get all new finishes, obviously, inside, and energy efficiency of everything goes up. Your lighting control systems, that's on the next one there, that kind of stuff, lighting control would be much more efficient and modern. And it it'll just, I think it gives you, sort of rolled in with the additional space, it basically establishes a baseline for probably work that the city should consider regardless of where they are located. City Hall would be located, you know, you'd probably want to at some point get this stuff to this new level. There's one more slide there. We focused on the council chambers just for a quick review here. We came up with roughly 66 fixed seating. It's a few less than this room. We've got some good ideas about how we could utilize the workaround mechanical space on that first floor. Luckily, that hard ceiling is a little bit higher than the other two floors, so it'll allow us to do a little bit more volume in there and get something more attractive going in the council chambers itself. And then proposed fixed seating, we did allow for 2 wheelchair spaces in there as well. I think that's just prudent to have some of that if we're making the entire building ADA compliant. So that's pretty much the overview. The pictures doesn't, you know, obviously none of these items, finishes have been specified to the level of where we have a specific product in mind. This is just some generic items. And the reason I mention that is this shows like real cushy seats, but we can get some hard ones or spikes or depending on how you want the meetings to go. So I think that's pretty much it. I have one more there that just shows the fenestration system that we would recommend to replace all that with the storefront. Obviously that's the latest and greatest and highest efficiency available. And you know, something I touched on briefly earlier, but probably the biggest part of replacing all this stuff is it gets the openings in the building covered to where you meet current code compliance for windstorm, design pressures, that kind of stuff. So I think that's really a key factor. After all that said, Monmouth came to the conclusion that I think it's well worth in the interest of the city to pursue this further. I think it's a fairly good deal that building is available to you and in the shape that it is for all the things that we'd like to keep and all the things we don't really need is going away anyway. You're pretty much going to end up with a structure that compares very favorably with new construction for a fraction of the cost. I am all ears for questions.
Thank you, Willem. Questions, folks?
I got a question. And as you know, when you were meeting and explaining to me, it sounds like, is it still available where you'll be able to set some prices once there's an agreement? You know, there was an advantage with some of the way y'all were doing business. You could set on some of the bigger items, you could go ahead and lock in a price, and we wouldn't have to worry that it was all gonna just skyrocket?
Sure. You know, we didn't necessarily delve too deep into the actual construction portion during this phase 1, and this would be future stuff that you guys are still about to talk about. But absolutely, you know, the construction market has kind of been strained the last few years, just for a variety of factors. But we've learned how to cope with some of the new norms, I would call them. And one of those things is where we would pre-acquire long lead time items, you know, as early as possible, and basically warehouse way more things than we normally would, just because that's about the way you have to do it these days. A, get your hands on it, and B, get it for a reasonable price.
Anybody else up on the dais have any questions for Will? Anyone in the audience have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you.
I got another question.
Okay.
Well, like, is this a spot where I can ask y'all how you feel about this?
This is the time.
Since I can't ever talk to you any other time?
Yes.
Because that's
Don't
important
forget
to
that.
me,
Yeah.
to know what your feeling
Yeah,
is about
this is the time. This is called, we have a discussion in the sunshine.
Right.
In front of everybody.
Well, I just, you know, wasn't sure how that went.
Mhm.
But I think it's a great idea. I mean, I don't like spending a lot of money, but the thing is that I see, is this a time for me to say this, what I think?
Sure.
Sure,
And then you
absolutely.
tell me what you think?
Sure.
You know, I like the building, and I like that, I think it'll really do a lot for our downtown area. And I think it's just like the exploration showed, it's a good solid building, and it sounds like the CRA would work with us very favorably, as I understand it. Is that correct?
Sure. No, absolutely.
Ask Shannon, she's new.
I can't speak for the board though.
She's
but,
rethinking that appointment.
He's a board member, so he can't
Yeah.
speak for the board.
Okay, well, that's what I'd heard. And then, and it sounds like I don't know who they are, but there's a there's a thing in here about what it would cost to redo this building, and that would be a substantial amount. So if that money's gonna be spent, it seems to me like it would be a good idea to invest in this. And I was really impressed when I went on the tour of the building, but I never got to ask you all how you feel about it and what your feeling is on it. Because that determines a lot of, you can bring up things I don't know or haven't thought of.
Well, this building will cost us more than what we would do here. However, if you're looking at it dollar for dollar, where do you get a better bang for your buck? It's down the street at that bank.
Plus, we
do
can
have a
sell
fairly good
this.
analysis in there, but we can go over those numbers.
Yes, there is an analysis in there.
Yeah, I read it
that-
all.
Yep, and I think that's what convinced me, because I was
Me
scared to
too.
death
Me
of the
too.
idea of spending that kind of money to renovate
Yeah.
a building until I saw the comparison, and it was like, well, in the long range, it's a no-brainer.
I think, Willem, if we go over the cost, I mean, we need to share that, I think, as a big portion that we haven't shared yet, as far as what the cost is, and then explain it. But if you look at that chart there, and it's awful small that you can see, it's about, to do the entire building, is that first one, you estimate at 3.9, correct?
Yes, sir.
And then if we look at renovating this building, it's 2.7 roughly.
So the 2.7 represents the projected renovation. So what we did is we calculated the square foot value of what the renovation there costs. And then we
Okay.
projected it onto the 9,500 square foot that you have here.
If we did something
That's what
here.
that 2.7 represents. So the blue bar there would be if you did the same renovation here in this footprint. Then the orange 1.6 on top of that is if you expanded this building with new construction costs to
Right.
bring it to that 12,750 square
Right.
foot, which would what you would occupy on the first two floors
Right.
there. And then the gray bar on top of that is if you expanded this building to 20,000 square foot. So then you end up talking about 7.8 million roughly. That all added up. That's renovation costs.
Right.
And then that next bar is new construction. So it tells you 4.6 if you built a 9,500 square foot new. Another 1.6 if you
You're
went
gonna say you're
to 12,000.
450 a square foot
And then
for
about
new commercial
9.8 if you did the whole
like
thing.
this.
And I'll be honest with you, Roland actually emailed me a question a few weeks back. He asked about the index pricing that we use to determine these projections, and it was really about history, and he wanted to see how far back I could dig. But while I was in the archives trying to see how far back their numbers went, I got the last quarter that's not even represented in my document, and it's eye-watering. So,
Yeah.
so
What do you
it
mean?
definitely.
What do you mean?
Just the way construction costs is estimated
Oh.
in the last quarter.
So I asked
Horrible.
Willem, in our packet, there's a construction cost index chart. It's a line graph,
Right.
and it shows Mortensen and Turner Construction. It shows the average construction cost from 2009 to current. And I wanted to see if we could go back to 04, 05, and see what 08 and 09 did. He didn't have the data available, but Mark, Willem, I'm sure can speak. The
Well-
cost doesn't typically go down, and I wanted to see that in a graph.
No, it's very
I'll-
frightening.
I'll say one thing about that, and it's sort of strange timing, and all of this is, of course, complete speculation, but I'm gonna tell you that it's just by chance that the stage we're in with this project and the projected time it would take if it went to construction, you might find yourself in a position where, and I'm not gonna say the prices are coming down, but we might be at a spot where there's gonna be a little bit of a flat spot.
Leveling off.
In
Even if
construction
it
costs.
level off.
And I think it's just because of how they have to fight inflation, there's gonna be a little bit of a squeeze. So if anything, it might work out to where you just catch that when it's a little flat. And of course, nobody can guarantee any of that, but it's possible.
We've done phase one with y'all right now.
Yes, sir.
On the next item is a phase 2 and phase 3.
Correct.
And take us to where, and I don't want to jump the gun, but I think that helps kind of understand a little bit more where we're at is in phase 2 and then phase 3. Where does that get us to the point, we get a set of plans that are biddable, right, that you can actually get closer costs, correct?
Yes, so phase 2 develops the drawings to what we call a bid set. So those aren't construction ready necessarily, and that just means that every last T and I has been crossed and dotted, but it captures all the information to get actual numbers. So instead of a budget that has a margin of error, of course, because we're not pricing specific items, this bid set would have complete specifications, and then that would give you a hard budget, basically. It'll tell you exactly what construction's gonna cost.
Okay.
And then phase 3 was just completing that bid set, should it go forward to permit documents, basically, and permitting.
So we're spending $40,000 to get a number.
It's 32,628 for phase 2, and that's hard bid, yes.
32?
32,628.
And phase 3 is,
Discuss what phase 3 is.
So I'll read it for you here, and this is off of our original submittal for the RFQ, but it's basically complete revisions of the approved 50% set. So city gets another look at what we have on paper, although we've sort of already done this step. Client review and approved bid set. So we developed that, like I said, into a full set of documents that captures enough information to where if I send it out in an ITB, an invitation to bid to my subcontractors, they know what they're looking at and they can count actual items. And then there's complete revisions of the bid set included here, and then provide construction proposal for the bid set. And that's the hard cost. So that's where you get a proposal from ARPA that says to build this building with these specifications will cost X amount of dollars. And that would be a number that can go to contract, whereas the current budget obviously cannot. So that's phase 2, is to get us to that point.
Right.
You have a real number and you know exactly what's going in the building.
Okay.
Instead of us discussing what the chairs are gonna be, there'll be an actual chair specified.
and the last kind of portion is this, if you do go through this, and this property goes up for sale, so.
What'd you say?
I said, then this property will be sold.
Oh, yeah.
so.
Yeah, that's an advantage. So is it a for sure thing that we would be getting that building
No.
without paying a lot of money for it, or what's that process?
There's the two.
That's where we
back
asked
there.
Shannon again, so.
Well, have
Said
there
the
already
CRA
been
indicated-
discussions,
Yes,
or?
there has been.
Yes, there has been.
Okay,
And it's been positive, so.
okay.
Right, David?
Right. Right. Which I guess brings us around to the next agenda item then. Unless you have some more discussion.
No,
Because this
I
is-
think it's a great idea because we talk about helping downtown and that end of downtown
Absolutely,
needs help.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I think it's a great idea. It's a great building and, I know it's a lot of money, but we recover some of it when we sell this.
yeah. You know, I think the scary thing is you still, life has to go on. And we have to grow and change, and so to try to figure out how to be reasonable with that. Anyway, that's just, so kind of feel like it's a good idea?
I do.
Yes.
To go to this next step.
Yeah, so we need a
I
motion.
think we go to the next step, and really, I think what next also has to happen is that we need to get Penny involved and to kind of map this out on a 20 or 30-year basis, what it's gonna do to a budget standpoint, too.
Right. And no, we don't need a motion for what we have just discussed, but we do need to open it up to the public to see if there's any comment about that, and then we can go into the next agenda item, which will require a motion. So, on everything that you've heard, what you've seen up on the screen, what you understand or don't understand, if you have any questions, now's the time to come on up. And I see Mr. Hensley wanting to get up, so, Mayor?
I think this topic has been on the agenda for our city for some years, actually. And I just want to encourage you, I think it's very, very good to go forward with this plan. I would encourage that as well. I think I had an opportunity to look at the plan in detail and talk with Terry about it one evening this week. And so I just want to encourage you to proceed because I think it's the right thing to do for all the reasons that you seem to have expressed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Michael?
Mike Waldron. I echo the Honorable George Hensley, and we had the same situation in Lake Placid when I was on the town council, and there was a big church down there that was for sale, and a lot of our council folks at that time, that's a lot of money. Well, money's never cheaper than it is right now, and I think it's a great idea. Also having something with more people downtown Sebring on Ridgewood and helping out the beautiful restaurants that are in that vicinity, and I say thumbs up on it, and yeah, make it happen. All about it.
Michael, you're referring to your civic center there on Main Street that used to be the...
Yes, sir, it's the government center now, and Lake Placid did move into that building. And,
Yeah,
and
I was there at a function one time. It was very nicely done.
And it is getting used extensively now.
Yep.
The Lake Placid Swim Banquet was just there a couple of weeks ago.
Great.
And formerly, Lake Placid didn't have a civic center to meet in.
Right.
So it's dual purpose and working great.
It's north of town.
So was where Jerry Pendarvis's funeral was? That's City Hall, right?
Yes, ma'am, on 27, right across
Right,
from
but that was a
Church.
big church.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is another church that you're talking about that?
No, ma'am. When we were downtown in the old part of downtown Lake Placid, we looked at the church that was built up on 27.
North of town.
North of
Oh,
town
okay.
on 27 there by the railroad bridge. That's the one where the government center is now.
Okay.
That's the one that we looked at, and then we passed, and then they came back and bought it a few years later.
Yeah, I want to learn more about Lake Placid. It's such a lovely town.
It's a great.
Anybody else? Going once? Going twice? Okay, let's move along then. This is a compliment, if you will, to the last item that we just discussed on item 10F. It's the authorization to amend Phase 1 design contract and accompanying resolution and budget amendments. Mr. Natlick?
Good evening, Council. Staff has prepared the requisite resolution and budget amendment to proceed. If you wish to, I don't think I need to cover Phase 2, Phase 3. I think Willem's taking care of that.
Can't hear you. If you'll move up or do something about that. Speak up, maybe.
Good evening, Council. Staff's prepared the requisite
didn't
resolution
work.
and budget amendment to proceed. I believe Willem's covered Phase 2, Phase 3.
Scott,
Is your microphone on?
is your microphone on? So
It
you
is.
got a green light?
Yeah, we hear him. Yeah, we hear him.
I hear him.
I
You can hear him okay?
I'm hearing
All right, well,
I hear him.
I'm seeing some people are saying they can't hear him.
Can you hear me now? How about now? Is that better?
Wow, look at that.
Okay, one more time. Staff has prepared the requisite resolution and budget amendment to proceed. That's attached. What we've done is prepared it for both Phase 2 and Phase 3. If you wish to proceed with both Phase 2 and Phase 3, then we'll amend the original Phase 1 design contract, and the requisite resolution and budget amendment will appropriate all those funds, so that's just over $40,000 in funds.
Okay, I guess, the, we have a resolution and budget amendments
Correct.
that we need to go ahead and ask Mr. Swain if he thinks there's anything we have any concern.
No, sir, the resolution need only be introduced in written form, so we don't need to read that.
Okay,
If you all are ready to move forward with the instructions to revise the contract and approve the resolution, a motion to that effect would be timely.
okay.
Okay.
Any discussion up here?
I make a motion that we authorize the city attorney to prepare an amended contract for city council, the council president's signature and approve resolution 2020-01 22-07, authorizing budget amendment 122.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor.
Second.
Have a second from Mr. Bishop. He just beat you up by half a second by a nose. Any comments from the public? Further discussion? Kathy, call. Sorry? Okay. Kathy, call the roll.
Bishop,
Yes.
Cardile,
Yes.
Mendel,
Yes.
Stewart,
Yes.
Chapman.
Yes. Business from the audience, Kathy, do we have any?
No, sir.
We have no business from the audience.
No,
City
sir.
attorney's business?
No,
I don't
sir.
see anything. City administrator's business, unless you have something to share with us?
I do.
Go ahead.
So, as council is aware, the city is currently experiencing issues retaining and attracting employees. So in light of this, and with impending bargaining negotiations on the horizon, staff is requesting an executive session to discuss collective bargaining matters such as wages and benefits. We would like to schedule that in afternoon sometime in the next week, if possible. So if you can all look at your calendars and see whether or not you guys can come to an agreeable date.
I think that's a good
Maybe
idea.
Friday, Monday, or Tuesday?
I
And here's
think we
my
should-
calendar. I feel like an idiot.
I'm not available Monday, the 23rd.
Is that electronic, Jerry?
Let's
Yeah,
do
very-
it.
I'm very high tech.
Can we do it Friday afternoon or Friday morning? Huh? Yeah, Friday would be the best time, and I'm available
On the
anytime.
20th, this Friday?
This Friday.
Oh,
This Friday?
What
This
what
Friday.
time?
We're kinda in a crunch here.
yeah.
Yeah, what time are you proposing?
Whatever time everybody can get together.
It's bad for me, but maybe I can change it.
Friday morning. I'm not available Friday afternoon
Well,
or
Friday
all day
morning.
on
I'm not
Monday.
available in the morning.
You're not available in the morning. You want to shoot for Tuesday?
Hey,
24th?
we're in a crunch.
Monday's fine.
We're in a crunch. I'm telling you, we're in a crunch.
Okay, Monday, I'm actually out of town. We're having the burial for my mom down in Boca Raton.
What? Your mom passed away?
Yeah,
Sorry to hear that.
yeah, that was 2 years ago.
Okay, so.
During the pandemic. She's still sitting on our fireplace.
Well,
We
I'm
couldn't get
very
the family
sorry
together
about
in
it.
the pandemic. Remember that?
Oh, I know I'm
National Lampoon
behind on a lot
Vacation.
of things.
Yeah, so no, I'll be in Boca Raton on Monday, the 23rd.
Okay,
so-
Bernard, how much of a crunch are you talking?
We just need to do it fast. Tuesday, how about Tuesday?
Too
I'm
late.
good all day Tuesday.
I'm telling you, it's too late.
Okay,
Tuesday
this
the
next week.
24th?
It's too late.
What do you mean it's too late?
Well, you haven't been in the meetings, and I can't tell you.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just telling you. Can you do Friday at lunch?
We have several employees that have been made job offers and are ready to bail out because our pay scale has not been updated, and we are faced with possible crisis.
We got a time limit.
So did somebody say they're not available on Friday afternoon?
How about Thursday?
Thursday's fine with me.
Thursday.
We're gonna another Thursday here.
You're not good at all on Thursday?
I'm good every day.
I'm good every day.
That's what your wife said.
Careful, careful.
No, that's being a nice guy.
Oh,
You know,
okay.
come on now.
I'm good Thursday.
I can do Thursday.
There you go. What time Thursday, folks?
I can do any time.
I'm free.
Afternoon,
Afternoon, okay.
Afternoon for Mark,
say 3 o'clock.
2:30, 3 o'clock, whatever you want.
3 o'clock's good.
3 o'clock, Thursday, the 19th.
Is that a good time? 3 o'clock's good for me.
3's fine with me.
Right here. Right here?
Right here.
Okay, 3 o'clock, Thursday, the 19th. We'll be discussing salaries. Right?
That's it.
And/or benefits.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
And just as a reminder, that is executive session, that those meetings are closed to the public, just so everyone is aware of that.
So let's consider it a shade meeting.
Yes,
It's
it's a
considered a
shade.
shade
It's a
meeting.
shade meeting.
Anything else, Mr. Nadler?
No, sir.
City clerk's business.